The world's 20 brightest minds failed, but a poor waitress cracked $1 million mystery in 60 seconds. In Elena Morales's heart, the fear of being underestimated weighs heavily yet. Her eyes blaze with determination. Can she overcome prejudice to conquer both the tech world and the heart of a lonely millionaire? All right, my dear viewers, get ready for this drama-filled tale of love and forgiveness. Take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see people joining us from all around the globe. In the 27th floor conference room of Whitaker Innovations headquarters, greenish-white LED lights glared down on tense, sweat-drenched faces. The wall clock read just before 3 p.m., yet none of the 20 tech engineers seated around the long glass table had drawn a single breath of relief all afternoon. On the whiteboard sprawled a maze of formulas and repeatedly crossed-out algorithms proof of their impotence in the face of a software error threatening to wipe out a $100 million AI contract with the Pentagon. "We're going to lose this contract," one engineer screamed, slamming his hand so hard on the table that his cold coffee cup clattered. The coffee splashed out, soaking into the stack of technical dossiers. Another female engineer raked her fingers through her hair, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Despair hung thick in the air. In the corner of the room, where few were paying attention, Elena Morales quietly cleared away the remnants of her lunch tray. Her pale blue uniform bore a small stain on the sleeve, and her neatly tied-back hair revealed exhaustion etched across her young features. This 24-year-old from Miami didn't belong to the world of Armani suits and Rolex watches. She was a part-time server, hired by the company to work events just to earn money for her younger brother's heart medication. Yet when Elena's deep brown eyes flicked over the whiteboard covered in formulas, something ancient awoke within her. She frowned. Then she paused. "Wait a minute," Elena whispered, still clutching the tray, but her feet unconsciously stepped forward. She set the tray on the nearest table and bent to pick up a blue marker lying on the floor. Nobody noticed. All eyes remained glued to screens and charts, lost in panic. But in the doorway stood James Whitaker, 35-year-old CEO and tech prodigy lauded by Forbes watching in silence. He towered over everyone, rolled-sleeve white shirt, his cold gaze slicing across the room like a scalpel. And that gaze stopped on Elena. Elena drew a bold diagonal through the original formula. Then, as if she'd done it 1,000 times before, she quickly swapped out a variable and hand-wrote 2 lines of code. Her hand trembled slightly, but her eyes did not. "Done," she said softly, then turned back to her tray as though nothing had happened. For a few seconds, the room fell so silent one could hear the ventilation fans whir. A young engineer standing by the whiteboard stammered, She's right. She fixed it." "What?" another voice blurted. Everyone surged toward the board, eyes wide in disbelief. The error that had cost the team nearly 2 weeks of debugging vanished in a few strokes from an unknown server. James strode toward Elena, stopping 3 steps away. His voice was low and clear. "Who are you?" Elena turned, shrugged, and forced a smile. "I'm just the server, sir. But that formula, it's like measuring cake ingredients. Miss 1 pinch of sugar or get the batter ratio wrong, the cake falls apart." They still couldn't believe it. She talked about AI programming, as if it were baking. James said nothing. His eyes, the same eyes that had intimidated countless partners at the negotiation tableau, shimmered with an unreadable light. Then, for the first time anyone had ever seen, very subtly lifted the corner of his mouth. A smile, fleeting though it was. "What's your name?" "Elena Morales." "Can you stick around for a bit, Elena?" A few murmurs rippled through the room, skepticism mingled with envy directed at the petite young woman. But Elena simply nodded, neither bowing nor boasting. She knew that this moment, small though it might seem, could change her life. More importantly, she had to get home before 6 p.m. Her brother was waiting for dinner and his medicine. "And James?" In that instant, between chaos and salvation, he realized he had discovered something even more valuable than a flawless AI design, a razor-sharp mind hidden beneath an apron. A woman who didn't need the spotlight to shine. And now the real game was just beginning. From that moment on, James, the man who always adhered to principles and made the strictest choices, decided to do the unthinkable. Invite someone without credentials and without formal recruitment to join the top-secret project. Elena was appointed as special advisor. "What do you see that we don't?" he asked during a small meeting, his gaze still tinged with skepticism. Still in her waitress uniform, Elena rolled her food cart into the center of the room and smiled naturally. "Maybe because I don't try to make everything complicated." And from then on, the atmosphere in meetings changed. Elena often arrived early, bringing a few small pastries she'd baked the night before. Fat, sugar, and flour, just like data, algorithms, and output. Each needs the right amount at the right time, she explained as she mapped out a data analysis bug that had the team arguing for 3 days. No one expected such a simple analogy to untangle a whole web of confusion. At first, there were scrutinizing looks. Some veteran engineers whispered, "Why let a waitress teach AI?" But gradually, Elena made them reevaluate themselves. She didn't argue with empty theory. She asked the right questions, and her solution, simple yet effective, made everything clear. James noticed it first. He watched how she spoke, how she silenced even the most hard-nosed engineers, and he realized he was starting to look forward to meeting times, just to hear what she would say next. Once, after the group had argued about the accuracy of sensor data, Elena gently said, "When I was a kid, I sold lemonade on the street. Once, I put in too much sugar and the customer walked away. My mother said, if you don't taste your own product first, don't expect anyone else to trust it." The room erupted in laughter, but afterward, they understood Elena wasn't joking. She was pointing out that testing is the foundation of trust. The office became more alive. Elena placed a small potted plant in the corner, labeling it the meeting room's first bioreactor. She left a playful note on the whiteboard. "If stressed, stand up and breathe." James, accustomed to total control, found himself drawn into another world, soft, sincere, and sometimes illogical. He began to notice how she sat quietly reading old books during lunch breaks, how she secretly shared pastries with the security guard, how she smiled at everyone as if each person deserved to be cared for. One late afternoon, James caught Elena in the parking lot struggling to shove a crate into the trunk of her beat-up car. He walked over. "Need a hand?" Elena smiled, wiping sweat from her brow. "I'm used to it. Every week I pick up supplies from the church to deliver to needy families near my boarding house." James fell silent. He had never met anyone like her, a person who helped without needing a reason. No reward, no recognition. That evening, he returned to his sprawling penthouse and suddenly found it emptier than ever. No laughter, no smell of baked goods, no warm eyes to remind him he was cared for. Then one day, when the team celebrated surpassing a testing milestone, Elena declined the champagne. "I have to go home early," she said. "My little brother is waiting for dinner with me." James watched her retreating figure in the golden light and knew in the midst of everyone celebrating success, Elena chose to return to her silent responsibilities. He began to reflect about himself, about his life, about what he'd missed, chasing only achievements and fame, and about Elena, the woman with no degrees, no titles, yet capable of silencing an entire tech company with the simplest truths. For the first time in years, James wondered, had he been missing something, a part of life no report describes, no meeting mentions something more genuine, warm, and heartfelt than any number? And in the deepest corner of his cold heart, a seed began to sprout, slowly but surely. The relationship between Elena and James didn't develop according to any plan, but through countless small yet genuine and irresistible moments. lingering glances, accidental brushes of the hand, and half-finished conversations long after midnight. But it wasn't until that blackout that everything truly began. That day, the whole company was plunged into darkness by a power outage. Employees scattered, waiting for systems to reboot. James and Elena, who were on their way down to the lab, found themselves trapped in the elevator between the 14th and 15th floors. No one spoke for the first few minutes. Then Elena broke the silence. "When I was little, I was terrified of the dark. But after my mom died, the power at home often got cut, and I had to learn to live with it." Her voice was even no hint of complaint, just a memory. James turned to her, hearing her speak of her childhood for the first time. Elena continued, describing her small Miami neighborhood, how she dropped out of school to care for her brother with heart disease, how she washed dishes while listening to science audiobooks because she couldn't attend class. Each sentence was like a rough but honest slice of life. Then James opened up too. He spoke of his mother, a gentle violinist who passed away when he was a teenager, and of his billionaire father, tough, distant, who always demanded he become a better version of himself. "I can't remember the last time he hugged me," he said softly. In that moment, there was no boss and no employee, no CEO and no special advisor, just two people, sitting side by side in the dark, sharing scars that daylight never revealed. When the lights flickered back on, they illuminated their faces so close that their lips might have met. But Elena looked away and smiled softly. Better not ruin the boss's suit. James smiled too, but in his eyes, something had changed, permanently. A few weeks later, the company hosted a dinner at an upscale restaurant. After several refusals, Elena finally agreed to come. She borrowed her sister's dress, a deep blue, off-the-shoulder number that was elegant without being ostentatious. As she stepped into the room, the crystal chandeliers caught her face, and for a moment the party seemed to pause. The initial whispers of surprise quickly turned to admiration. Elenathe Waitress from before stood there, radiant with confidence. But it was her storytelling that truly captivated everyone. She spoke of her evening shifts, of the time she served the wrong table and got fired simply because she laughed too loudly. The entire table erupted in laughter. James sat at the corner of the room, watching quietly. He didn't take his eyes off Elena for a second. She wasn't trying to be someone else. She was simply herself, and that made her shine. But, as with all beautiful stories, the storm arrived sooner than expected. Just 2 days after the dinner party, a sensational article went viral. Unqualified waitress joins $1 million project. Accompanying it was a photo of Elena in her old uniform and the headline, "Has Whitaker Innovations Run Out of Talent?" Social media exploded with vicious comments. "She's only good at clearing tables. PR stunt? Sleeping with the CEO, huh?" Elena read every word, her heart tightening not because of the insults, she was used to that, but because she knew this would affect James and the team of engineers who had begun to trust her. That afternoon, she walked into his office, holding her phone, displaying the article. "Have you seen this?" Her voice was low, far from its usual softness. James nodded. "I'm handling PR. They have no right." "No," Elena interrupted. "I don't want to be the company's joke. I don't need anyone to protect me. But I can't carry on if everyone looks at me like I'm a circus act." She removed her ID badge and placed it on his desk. "I'm leaving. Thank you for believing in me." James sprang to his feet. "Elena, wait." But she was already gone, passing him by, walking through the unspoken plea in his eyes, and leaving James once more with that familiar emptiness he thought he had overcome. This time, however, something was different. His heart was breaking, and he knew that if he didn't act, he would lose her, forever. Dear viewers, take a moment to relax or sip some water, and stay tuned for the surprising twists ahead. Comment 1 if you're still here and enjoying the story. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. After the scandalous article, Elena chose to step back, not out of weakness, but because she understood that her worth did not lie in fleeting recognition. In those months, she re-enrolled in a distance learning program and applied to MIT, a move she once deemed impossible. Then, one March morning, an email from MIT appeared in her inbox with the subject line, "Congratulations, you've been awarded a full scholarship." Elena stared at the screen in disbelief. Her hand trembled as it hovered over the words, as if a firmer touch would make the dream vanish. She burst into tear-snot from surprise, but because, for the first time in her life, she could see a future taking shape. She sent James a simple message, "I got into MIT, I'm going." No emojis, no explanation, but James understood. He knew Elena would never choose the easy path, and he did not blame her. Deep down, he felt pride even as his heart clenched. Meanwhile, James was invited to speak at the annual technology conference in San Francisco, where the greatest minds in the world gathered. His keynote was the event's highlight, broadcast live around the globe. But as he stepped onto the stage under bright lights, greeted by roaring applause, he suddenly froze. On the slide behind him was the AI project map that he and Elena had developed together. Yet his throat constricted, his vision blurred. His heart raced not from fear, but from emptiness. She wasn't there. And in that instant, all the data, the technology, the accolades felt meaningless. In her MIT dorm room, Elena watched the live stream on her laptop. When she saw James hesitate, her eyes widened. A part of her wanted to switch it off and let him struggle alone. But her heart would not allow it. She jumped to her feet, grabbed her jacket. The express train to San Francisco took nearly 2 hours. But to Elena, it felt like the longest journey of her life. She ran and prayed not to let herself think, only to know this: she had to be there. When she arrived at the conference hall, his speech had been halted. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The organizers were scrambling for a solution. Then, the main doors swung open. Elena entered, hair tousled, jacket half-buttoned. She walked straight onto the stage, her eyes meeting James's bewildered gaze. She didn't need a microphone. She simply whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "Imagine you're teaching me to cook that Cuban stew you love." James closed his eyes for a moment. Then he exhaled. He turned back to his slides. And this time, he spoke not as a CEO, but as a storyteller. He explained AI like it was a stew requiring time, heat, and patience. He used the same simple, vivid, down-to-earth style Elena had used with the engineers. The audience laughed heartily. Applause thundered like rolling thunder. And when the presentation ended, James turned and gently took Elena's hand. "You just saved me once again." That evening, at the prestigious awards ceremony in the Technology Museum courtyard, everyone was still abuzz over the speech. Elena sat at the back of the auditorium unobtrusive, without ornate makeup, but her presence seemed to calm the entire room. As the MC prepared to announce the Breakthrough Contribution Award, James suddenly strode on stage. He carried nothing but a microphone. And his eyes did not seek the judges, but searched for one person in the audience. "Elena Morales," he spoke, his voice warm and clear. "You fixed the software, and you fixed my heart." The auditorium fell silent. No one spoke. All eyes followed James as he descended the steps to where Elena sat. He knelt and opened a small box from his suit pocket. "I can't promise you the whole world, but I promise to spend the rest of my world making you happy." Nobody laughed. No one doubted. For that love pure, simple, and more real than any accolade spoke for itself. Elena looked at him, tears glistening. She nodded. "I will study at MIT. Can you handle loving me from afar?" James smiled and squeezed her hand. "I've waited my whole life to meet you. A few miles, nothing at all." And the auditorium, seemingly holding its breath, erupted in applause. Not for software, not for a CEO, but for a love that transcended prejudice, past hurts, distance, and even themselves. Their wedding did not take place in a luxurious hotel ballroom, nor were there spectacular fireworks or a symphony orchestra. Instead, they chose a small beach south of Miami where Elena had played as a child, and where she had promised she would return one day if all her dreams came true. The sky that day was a clear blue, and a gentle breeze carried the salty scent of the sea and the jasmine fragrance from the floral crown her sister had made by hand. Elena wore a simple white dress, the one her mother had begun sewing before she passed away, which Elena had now finished herself. No designer label, no sparkle, just white fabric, a light lace trim, hugging her slender figure, reflecting the simplicity she carried in her heart. She walked barefoot along the sand, arm in arm with her father, her gaze fixed on James, the man in a cream-colored suit, waiting with emotion he could not conceal. His heart raced in his chest, not from fear, but because from this moment on, he would never be alone again. In the 3 months leading up to the wedding, James had learned to dance salsa, something he once thought impossible. At the small reception afterward, as music began to play, he pulled Elena into the circle of friends and family, starting with awkward steps that had Elena's relatives laughing uproariously. She laughed too, her eyes sparkling with joy. Their vows were spoken to the sound of gently lapping waves and a sunset that bathed the sky in gold. Elena held James's hand, her voice trembling yet resolute. "You gave me the chance to shine, but I promise to always remind you that happiness isn't found on a balance sheet. It's in the smallest moments, a timely hug, a warm dinner, a sincere apology." James answered in his warm, deep voice, "You taught me that love means accepting even mistakes. I no longer want to be the perfect version of myself. I only want to be the man worthy of you every single day. I promise I will never forget." For a moment, the beach fell silent, as if breathing in unison with their words. Then applause broke out, rolling in like the waves. The reception was simple, with traditional Cuban dishes laid out on long wooden tables, string lights woven among palm trees. Children ran and played, adults raised their glasses in toast, and Elena laughed without stopping. But then, amid the laughter and the lights, a chance remark made her heart catch. She heard her aunt say to a friend, "Thankfully, James sponsored Mateo's surgery at just the right time. Excellent surgeon, great hospital, he covered everything." Elena turned toward James, her heart tightening. She hurried to his side as he stood alone, looking out at the sea. "What did you do for Mateo?" she asked, her voice trembling, eyes glistening. James faced her without hesitation. "I just wanted to make sure you wouldn't have to worry." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to stay for me, not out of gratitude." Elena fell silent. 1 second, then 2. Tears ran down her cheeks, not from hurt, but because she realized James's love had never been just words. It was action, silent sacrifices, kind deeds done without expectation of recognition. She threw her arms around him, holding him tightly, as though pouring every ounce of love she had in her heart into that embrace. "I love you," she whispered. "Not because you helped me, but because you always let me take my own steps, even when you paved the way." James held her close, and for the first time in years his eyes shone with peace. No more pressure, no more calculation, just them, in this moment, knowing that love is not only passion, but choosing to stay, choosing to trust, and choosing to move forward together no matter how many twists the past held or how many challenges the future might bring. And as they danced under the moon, to soft music and the sound of waves, someone whispered, "Fairy tales are real, it's just that they don't begin with a kiss, but with the courage of 2 once broken hearts." 3 years after their simple beach wedding in Miami, Elena graduated from MIT's master's program in technology with honors, and her thesis was published in several academic journals. Yet instead of joining a major tech corporation, she and James founded Tech for All, a nonprofit organization dedicated to teaching programming for free to immigrant children, people with disabilities, and those marginalized by society. Their first headquarters was housed in an old warehouse on the outskirts of Boston, freshly painted in bright colors and emblazoned with the slogan, "Every Mind Matters." They began with 12 students' children who had never imagined writing code but had grown accustomed to dreaming in silence. Elena taught with all her passion, using examples drawn from the dishes her mother once cooked, and from memories of a time when she herself stood on life's sidelines. One October afternoon, at a community tech event in Chicago, Elena was invited to speak. On stage, before hundreds of students and their parents, she wore a Tech for All t-shirt and simple jeans, her eyes alight with the same fire she had shown on her first day in Whitaker Innovation's boardroom. "I once thought I was just a waitress," she began, her voice calm and warm. "But someone saw in me what I couldn't see in myself, and now I want to help you see that in yourselves." The auditorium fell silent. Many in the audience were moved to tears. In the front row, James quietly smiled, his gaze fixed on the woman he had once loved with all his heart and still loved, more deeply than ever. Tech for All continued to grow, opening branches in states across the U.S. Elena and James didn't just teach programming. They also ran life, skills, workshops, offered school counseling, and arranged internships for their students within their network. They believed that technology wasn't reserved for geniuses, it was a basic right for anyone who dared to dream. Then came another turning point. During a work trip back to Miami, they met an orphaned girl named Lucia, whose eyes mirrored young Elena's resilient, yet carrying a deep loneliness. Abandoned at birth, she had grown up in the foster care system with no permanent home. James looked at Elena. Elena looked at Lucia. No words were spoken, but both understood that their hearts had just discovered something more sacred than mission or passion. They adopted Lucia and gave her a new name, Esperanza, meaning hope. In their little Boston home, its walls covered with hand-drawn pictures, books, and a guitar, they celebrated Esperanza's first birthday with a cake baked by Elena, balloons decorating every corner, and guests including Elena's mother, her brother Mateo, and the Whitaker Innovations team. As Esperanza closed her eyes to blow out the candle, Elena whispered to James, "Thank you for never giving up on me." James squeezed her hand, his eyes moist. "Thank you for forgiving me." In that moment, they realized that love isn't about candlelit dinners or melodious tunes. Love is when you can forgive one another, build a home together, and believe that no one is too small to change the world. What do you think of Elena and James's story? Please share your thoughts in the comments below and rate the story from 0 to 10. We're eager to hear your feedback. If this story inspires you, please subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss upcoming tales. And it would mean the world if you shared this video with your friends and family in the US. Who knows, they might need a spark of hope just as Elena once did. Finally, let us know where and at what time you're watching this video. Knowing where the story reaches brings us immense joy. Thank you for listening and for believing that good things are always possible, even when they begin from the smallest moments.